Okay, it's time now for business news on the Midday View. Devan Murugan back with us. Devan, good afternoon again. Now we have more people unemployed in South Africa than we ever did. What picture do these latest unemployment figures paint? And they're from the period of Jan to March.
Yeah, that's the first quarter of the year on a day, Braden, where we have youth on the streets complaining about government's commitment to unemployment. There's been a marginal increase in the number of unemployment people in the country. To answer your question, an all-time high official rate, 32.6%. It translates to 7.2 million people out of work. We said earlier in the bulletin, when you consider the expanded definition, which includes discouraged workers, that number swells to 11.4 million people. I want to bring in an economist now to make sense of those numbers there. Sifiso Skenjana from the IQ Business Group. He's the chief economist there. Sifiso, thanks indeed for talking to us. So the unemployment number comes, well, plus minus a year after the president announced the country's multi-billion rand stimulus to help the economy. I'm wondering if these numbers could have been worse without that stimulus, or has it simply just not made a difference yet?
Good afternoon, Devan. If we've certainly been asking for people to look at the stimulus in the right, use the right language to talk about it, right? It's more relief than it is stimulus. And certainly then some of those relief mechanisms, like TERS, for example, would have, certainly relieved a lot of organizations and a lot of pressure in terms of them laying off people, and therefore I think the numbers are better than what the worst case scenario could have been. But I think what's really going to be more interesting when you truly talk the language of stimulus is everything that's been proposed around kind of the mega infrastructure projects, primarily because construction also has been a sector that's been bleeding for many consecutive quarters. And that now is a sector that also can absorb the kind of labor force that we've got, which is lowly skilled and semi-skilled labor. So when that certainly starts to get in motion, in its truest sense, I think we can start to see some of the stimulus benefits of infrastructure investment really translating into employment gains.
But for whatever the reason, that has been a drag. Let's bring in another component in here, over and above government's efforts to institute those infrastructure drives. There's also this issue hanging on the number coming out, as I said, at a time when unions struggle it out with government. I mean, whether it's state-owned enterprises or government groupings for better pay. What do you make of the issue around wages coming at a time, where we see this unemployment crisis? Do we take care of people who are already at work, or do we attend to the unemployed? That's the big question.
Yeah, I think the number of ways to look at the challenge and often, the first thing that we tend to see in any case, and this is why you can see a bit of an uptick from an economic activity point of view that doesn't have a commensurate increase in employment. And that's because there are a lot of people already in organizations who are what we call underemployed. And so they're overqualified for the roles that they do. And so now organizations are going to continue to look at opportunities to sweat the human capital assets. And therefore, you're probably going to see more people doing more so that the company can do more with less. And so that's one of the things that we're probably going to see. And that's why the employment numbers may not follow any marginal increase that we're seeing from an economic activity point of view. From a wages point of view, I think the story, again, is quite textured in terms of the role of unions in the South African economy. Right now, for people who are unionized, and only 24% of our labor force is unionized, and for those who are unionized, there is a wage premium of about 18 to 21%. And we also know that wage inequality is the largest driver of inequality in South Africa. And so there's clearly an important role that unions are playing in terms of reducing wage gaps. We're seeing proposals now, again, around caps in terms of executive pay, primarily because of the extent to which you're seeing, 60-odd% of people not having any bargaining power in the roles that they have. The implications, however, is also that when the economy is in the current format that we're in, it's hard to become agile from an earnings and a wages point of view. And so companies then move into more part-time employment, and therefore people don't get long-term benefits like pensions, etc. And that's then the other side of the, of the risk around kind of the pressure that the unions are putting in towards accelerating, wage increases in excess of inflation. And so I think the conversation must be a balanced conversation, and I think we really must start to look at more productive ways to have this conversation to ensure that we move towards more equitable, labor outcomes.
We're going to have to leave it there, Sifiso. Thanks very much indeed, but we get the point. Sifiso Skenjana there is from IQ Business. More on this unemployment figures as the afternoon unfolds, Bradan.